Welcome to the podcast of the impossible. I'm Peter Wood, and my guest and I share a passion for not only magic, but also Halloween, the Haunted Mansion, and all things spooky. Seems like a good time to share some ghost stories with one of my favorite witches, Caroline Gayle.
Thanks for having me back, Peter.
Welcome. I was so excited. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, but literally like this summer, I was thinking, I feel like it's a waste to have Caroline on in like July. Like the time October is when you and I need to be hanging out and chatting.
You know what? Witches and ghosts are for all seasons, Peter. Let's not like put them in a little October box.
Absolutely. And I mean, I remember you introduced me to a friend one time as this is Peter Wood. He has a haunted mansion bathroom. And what I loved about that is that actually, and that you're not the first person. And what's interesting is most of the people who do that are magician friends, where the fact that I'm a magician is not the most, that's not the go-to thing that makes me unique out of people that you know. Like,
no, I mean, introducing someone as a magician can sometimes be a little bit of a letdown. So it's always like, well, let's go.
I guess that's fair. Yeah. No, trust me. I enjoy having certainly a little slice of spooky all year round.
Exactly.
But yeah, so you are speaking to us now from Salem, Massachusetts. And
yes.
And I wanted to know sort of how that journey, like, you know, you've got one foot in the magic world, but you also have one foot in the ghost tours, spookiness of Salem scene. So sort of what's your, like, how did that relationship with that city start with you?
Oh, so Salem has always been kind of a little bit of a part of me. I'm from New England originally.
Okay.
When you grow up in New England, when you go to school here, an entire year of your schooling is dedicated to the Salem witch trials. And that was 8th grade for me.
Interesting.
So we took a field trip up here, and like, I just was like, oh, okay. I feel normal here. Like I grew up in a very small town in Rhode Island called Hope Valley.
Okay.
Super religious town, but so if you weren't part of one of the church groups, you weren't really part of the community. My parents were both atheists, so we were on the outskirts of it at all times. But when I came here, it was like, oh, there are lots of different denominations here. Not everyone goes to the Baptist or Catholic church. There's other communities for me here. And I felt more like I was able to just exist here without being like the odd person out.
Cool.
So that was my initial first interaction with Salem. Cut to 2019. So 20 years or so later,
right.
I come to Salem for Thanksgiving, kind of arbitrarily, just because I was like, I like traveling around Thanksgiving. It's, you know, more fun, interesting. You get to see somewhere new, eat somewhere new. And Salem was a completely different city than when I saw it initially. It still had that welcoming vibe, but there were all these businesses around that I hadn't seen before. There were all these like oddity shops and little museums that I fell in love with. There's a horror movie museum here.
Nice.
And it felt right. I felt very connected to the place. Salem also has this like super rich history of like, you know, dark stuff happening. The city's nearly 400 years old. So a lot of weird shit has happened here.
Yeah.
We have a lot of different ghost stories from a lot of different time periods. We have a lot of dark history, not just the witch trial. So it's this layered in it's layered creepiness, if that makes sense. So it just felt like the right place for me to be. Aspirationally, like I would love to open a dedicated magic theater here, like somewhere where guest performers could come in, people that have little esoteric shows could come in, and we could have like a spooky magical community here, which doesn't really exist full time. There is no like dedicated magic theater space here. Okay. We have a couple of different magic shows around town. Evan Northup will be doing a close-up magic show here. Christopher Balter has a magic show out of one of the churches in town. But there was never anywhere for guests, like magicians, to kind of travel in and actually show what they do.
Right.
So much like what you're trying to do with the Museum of the Impossible, like I wanted to create something like that here. Mm-hmm. Something that was almost like Speakeasy Northeast, where we could have like that kind of modular show system like they have at Speakeasy.
Right.
And something that was a little bit part museum and a little bit a little bit haunted, a little bit seancey, and just have that be here year round. I have had no idea how to accomplish that because like I obviously didn't live here. I didn't know the community here. I didn't know any other businesses here. So I've been kind of like trying to find my way in and kind of becoming a part of the community slowly but surely. I split my time between New York City and Salem, Massachusetts right now.
Okay.
I do have my magic show here for the month of October at Nocturne, that storefront, but I also work as a tour guide. So I do all the dark history tours and do the witch history tours during the day as well.
Awesome. And you've been doing those since 2020? I mean, like, when did you start the tours?
This is actually my second year doing it. I started doing them last year in 2022. Okay. I was very fortunate to get hooked up with a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Lilly at Better Than Fiction Tours, who also happens to be another redhead. So all of his employees are redheaded now. We are Salem's only ginger owned and operated tour guide company. If that matters to you.
That's hilarious.
Matters to me, obviously.
Sure. Yeah. That's cool.
A fun fact that I learned last year about the European witch trials. In Germany specifically, red hair was a sign of being a witch. So they burned about 40,000 redheads during their witch trials.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And here we just see if you're heavier than a duck or something. No, I don't really know. I'm not entirely up on the.
Yeah. It's the nose. It's the hat.
Yeah, your green skin.
Easiest.
So here, my brother and I have talked about doing ghost tours before, and about how we could do a really good ghost tour because we would want to put in magic tricks. Like we would want to put in special effects, basically.
Yes.
But what I sort of then realize is maybe that's too much on the nose. Like, if, for example, if you have a video projector and people are walking by and all of a sudden everyone sees the same, projected apparition on a screen or whatever, I'm sure a lot of people would see through that as, okay, that's a hokey trick. Whereas if somebody takes a flash photo and then they are looking at it and they see this glowing orb in it, which, I'm pretty sure is a speck of dust floating through the air, but whatever.
Probably.
Now, I feel like maybe that makes it more special, or almost like a Rorschach, like you want to keep it vague so that it is open to interpretation. Do you ever sort of have that fight of like, do you want to throw some magic into the ghost tour, or do you want to keep it as sort of pure as possible?
I've had this conversation with Christian Cajigal. He also does historical tours. He's a magician that I know from Speakeasy, and he does ghost tours in San Francisco during October.
Oh, cool.
He used to do magic tricks in his ghost tour, and he took them out because it was kind of like it does exactly what you say. It's a little bit too on the nose, and it kind of leads with people expecting all of it to be not real. And right. I approach a lot of ghost tours as a skeptic because I was raised that way. I was raised by skeptics and going to the James Randi Educational Foundation, but I love ghost stories. Sure. And people that go on these tours want to believe. They want to have that closed door. Right. What is it? It's that Alfred Hitchcock quote, "Nothing is as scary as a closed door."
Right,
or
right.
Something along those lines. Very badly paraphrased. But the more mystery you allow for the person that's experiencing these stories, the better it is overall. Okay. The more they can allow their imagination to kind of run rampant overall. And that's what you want. You want them to imagine these things. You want them to experience it for themselves.
Right, right. Yeah, well, and I also feel like so I haven't been to Salem, unfortunately. Again, it's on the list. I'll get there soon. But when I've done ghost tours in other cities, the joke between my wife and I, whenever we want to like take a virtual shot, is when a ghost tour person says, "And some say," and then I'm like, okay, well, everything from here on out is just BS. And yeah. Some say that there's a woman can be seen, but like, I want you to tell me, like, 3 weeks ago on this tour, we saw a woman walking around in that upper story window. Like, that to me is creepier than, and some say the Confederate soldier still walks these grounds at night. Like, okay, whatever.
The thing is, like, ghost tours and haunted tours and dark history tours in particular, it's very easy to implant a concept into a tour ecosystem. You see this in Savannah, Georgia. There's the Sorrel Mansion.
Okay.
There is a ghost story that happens in the Sorrel Mansion based around an enslaved woman named Molly.
Okay.
And historians have proven that Molly never existed. Yet every tour in Savannah will talk about Molly.
Right.
If you introduce like the vaguest little ghost story into an ecosystem of tour guides, they will all hear it and it will spread like wildfire. It will get weirder and weirder the more people it goes through. But it becomes like you can't tell what's real and what isn't real at the end of the day.
Sure.
We don't know where the line is anymore.
Yeah. Well, but
I'm very fortunate that I work for a tour company that like just does like these are the facts. This is the most we know.
Cool.
Yeah. So I don't have to we don't have any of the some say kind of lines in our tour.
Yeah. Well, and you were talking before about how like Salem has enough of a rich history in actually, I mean, like you've got plenty to pull from of crazy, scary stuff that has happened there legitimately, you know?
Yes.
That helps.
I mean, the witch trials in and of themselves were crazy enough, but we also have we have some pretty bonkers murders. We've had, it's a nearly 400-year-old city. We had this massive fire that destroyed a lot of land. And obviously the witch trials were this great national tragedy that have a bunch of horrific stories attached to them.
Right.
So it's like, we can just tell those they're scary enough.
Yeah.
People are scary enough.
Yeah. Well, and also, so I wonder too if it's just, you know, a place like Savannah obviously feels, I guess they're okay with having sort of year-round ghost tours, but there is something to me about Salem that do you feel like the city has sort of given itself permission to have it be spookiness year-round? Like, does it? I feel like it would be strange if it's like a bright spring day and the birds are chirping and you're walking around hearing ghost stories and learning about witches, but maybe that still works. I don't know.
Fun fact, most of the witch trials did take place in spring and summer. So
okay.
all of our executions took place between June and September.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah. But it is a town where people will have those tours year round. We still have ghost stories going year round. And there is a little bit of a spooky factor all the time here. You can get a pumpkin spice latte year round here.
Wow. Nice. Okay. Good to know.
Any coffee shop except Dunk's will get you a pumpkin spice.
Okay. Awesome.
But it is that kind of place. People come here for that experience. They want to be a little bit scared. They want to be a little spooked out, you know?
Yeah. I forget. There's a town called Santa Claus. I'm blanking on where it is, but anyway, that is just Christmas all the time. And so it feels like you should totally have the Halloween town year round. Like that's a place that should exist, you know?
Yep. Salem is that place.
Yeah. Always. Well, I want to do a quick Disney nerd. You've been to Disneyland a few times, right?
I used to have an annual pass. I would have lunch there.
Nice. So was this, we talked last time about sort of your Magic Castle, LA time. Was this all in the same sort of time period?
Oh my, yes. I live in Los Angeles is oddly the longest place I've lived anywhere since college. I was there for 4 years, but I had an annual pass every year I was there. So I would live in Disney some weeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely, I mean, I've been twice and it totally has that locals park feel. It is a very different vibe from Disney World in terms of the people who are there and just sort of how they're treating it. You get that feeling that it's like a public park or a mall kind of a feel, which is really fun.
Yep. People always say that talk about the Disney adults in Disney World, but Disneyland is really their domain. You know?
Yeah.
That's where they'll go and have photo shoots.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like that's fair. Like I mean, obviously people bring their families and go to Disneyland, but I do know more just grown-ups who go and enjoy hanging out there. Just the feeling.
Yeah.
Is Haunted Mansion the top of your list, or do you have other attractions there that you're a fan of?
Haunted Mansion is the absolute tippy top of my list.
Okay.
I am very fond of the Indiana Jones ride as well.
Yes. Uh-huh.
There's a great game you can play on that ride called Yelling at Animatronics.
Okay.
Whenever you see the Indiana Jones figure, you yell at it as if it is the real life Harrison Ford, and you say, "Get in the car, you're in your 70s."
Oh, that's great. That's
So it's exactly what to do.
yeah. No, it's yeah, I always so what I think is fun about that ride, a little weird tidbit, they didn't get the rights for his likeness on anything but the poster. So
oh my God,
the reason the animatronic doesn't quite look like Harrison Ford is because they weren't allowed to make it look like Harrison Ford.
that's delightful.
Yeah, and so but I feel like then they have to do some weird things with like lighting. Like they kind of want to, they don't want to make it super obvious that it's not him. But yeah. I don't know. It is frustrating. Like, you guys sure you don't have enough money at this point? I mean, maybe they don't want to like reskin him or whatever, but come on, like now, you own Lucasfilm now. This is all you. Like, let's make it look like Harrison Ford, but you know,
maybe just maybe. Yeah, I know that it got a revamp. What was it, in 2016, 17ish? But I think that was the last time they did any major work on the ride. You know?
Right. Yeah. Well, and also there's a very strong rumor that we are getting one over here on the East Coast, the dinosaur ride in Disney's Animal Kingdom. That whole area, the Dino Land area, is being re-themed, and the track layout for the dinosaur ride is identical to the Indiana Jones Adventure. Yeah. It's just a different, obviously out there it used to be a dinosaur theme. So we'll see. We may end up with one over here on the East Coast, but that's definitely one of my go-tos on whenever I'm out. The couple of times I've been to Disneyland, it's such a great ride. Yeah,
it's perfect. After Indiana Jones, I do like Big Thunder Mountain, and it's always a good time. There's that goat with the dynamite. You stare at it, you get extra dizzy going around.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And have you ever been out to Disney World or just land?
I have done Disney World a few times. Okay. I love it just as much. I do like the Haunted Mansion a little bit better in Disneyland than Disney World. Yeah. I like that Louisiana, like, bog style kind of thing going on there.
Totally. Yeah.
Plus, I'm surrounded by New England mansions all the time. Like, I understand this as a concept.
That's funny. Yeah, I've got a super nerdy deep dive book about the Haunted Mansion, and in particular, like where the inspiration for the architecture in the Disney World version came from. And so when we were touring, like the Hudson River Valley area, it was fun. There was a Gothic revival, where, rich people around the turn of the last century would build these mansions in the woods that looked like medieval castles, even though they were built in the 1900s or whatever. So that's sort of the architecture they were going for. And so it was fun just to see some of those actual places that were sort of the inspiration for the ride,
I have to ask this question. Have you done the deep dive on the Paris Haunted Mansion, the Phantom Manor?
I've got a I don't know how deep of a deep dive. I mean, I have every book ever. So
sure.
But yeah.
I wish I have not been to Disneyland Paris, but I am obsessed with their Haunted Mansion because it's narrated by Vincent Price.
Yeah.
One. But it's also got a much darker storyline than the other two. So it's like, why don't we have that over here? I want that one here.
Totally. No, it is fascinating to sort of see how the different mansions, like sort of, and the Parisian or just the European sensibilities of we can go darker. It's totally fine, Yeah. And then contrast in Hong Kong, they have Mystic Manor instead of Haunted Mansion. And it's because the folks who visit there will have they think about ghosts different. Like ghosts are ancestors who should be revered and who should not be seesawing on a tombstone,
Fair. That's fair.
And so
I get it.
So it's kind of fun, and I haven't been there. Again, plenty of deep dive on videos and stuff, but what they've done there is more this magical music sparkle that goes around. And so still spooky, magical things happen, but it's less about ghosts, you know?
Yeah, that ride looks so technically advanced. It's astonishing. Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of the ones like in Shanghai Disney and Hong Kong Disney that are just like, oh my God, like the technology in those rides is insane.
Totally. Yeah. Well, no, it's, I'm sure I'll get to Salem before I get to Hong Kong, but both are on my list for sure, you know?
Put it on there.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit more about, so you have a show coming up or happening this month, Pulling Strings.
Yes.
And sort of where did that idea come from? Like what's the itch that you're trying to scratch by putting that show together?
This particular show is more of an exploration of our connections with each other, and how we can use magic to kind of explore that. So I don't like magic where it's just like me doing something that you have to kind of figure out. I don't like having a puzzle for you to solve. I want you to be on this narration with me. And that's what I think magic should be overall.
Yeah.
It's the only art form where your audience is not passive for the most part. So I want to see what we can do when we explore that connection that we have. What are the strings that link me to my audience to each other? And then they literally have strings to pull throughout the entire thing. So
nice.
It's like, all right, well, we have a theme. Magic is a really interesting way to actually get to know people around you. You have the opportunity to kind of figure out what a person is. They're a little bit more, when you pull out a deck of cards or when you pull out a deck of tarot cards in particular, people open up in this really beautiful way that they wouldn't have otherwise. So let's see what that looks like, you know?
Right. Yeah. What I've never done any tarot reading. So what is I do think it's fascinating where you are both an atheist skeptic, but then you also are securely in this world of, you know, in all cases, theatrical, you know, whether it's giving a reading or giving a ghost tour. Where do you sort of like, what do you see your role as in terms of what you should leave the audience believing or not believing?
With tarot cards and pulling out the spiritual stuff, I always treat any sort of tarot card reading as a reflection of that person. I'm not reading the cards, I'm reading you.
Sure.
The cards are kind of a way for us to reflect on who you might be. Your reaction to the cards tells you more about what you're feeling about that situation than the cards themselves are actually going to. Like an elaborate coin flip at the end of the day. One of the things, I will repeat this until the day I die, the thing that I'm best at in magic is cold reading. Like I can, like figuring out who a person is, I can do that very, very quickly. And it's the best superpower I have in all of this.
Right.
And I always try to preface all of this with, these are just pieces of cardboard. They don't really they don't tell you what your life is going to be or not going to be. Here's a piece of advice that will kind of attach to that. And let's move from there.
Sure.
The thing that scares people the most is not the cards. It's that moment where they feel seen. We're not used to really having things noticed about ourselves. We're not really used to someone like saying, "Oh, this is who you are."
Right.
Like, we don't expect that at the end of the day. I don't expect that from people at the end of the day, and I'm always unnerved when someone does it to me.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's kind of what I lead with that. As far as like telling ghost stories and mixing that with magic, I always preface it with, there's a line in Play Dead, which is, we are never so alive as when we are scared to death. And we need a moment to be scared. We need a moment to remember these people we cared about or didn't care about, or these scary people. And let us allow ourselves to kind of embrace that fear for a moment in time.
Right. No, that's great. Well, and I also think that, you know, the more, I mean, when you're doing it in a proscenium setting, and even I would say on a ghost tour, I think even though you're not on a physical stage, I think people realize that there is a performance element to it, and you're given some license to sort of be more theatrical than if you were a tour guide at the Smithsonian, you know.
Yeah. The other big thing with the tour guide stuff that I do here, witch trials are during the day, so that's all very straightforward. We're just talking about something that actually happened.
Sure.
Dark history tour, when we touch on like the concepts of historical hauntings around town, I start with talking about Houdini in Salem, because he performed here, and we actually named a street after him.
Right.
And I always talk about the latter half of his life, when he was at war with spiritualists and mediums, and how much he would detest having a street named after him in a town that is dedicated to the supernatural. He would probably be rolling in his grave if
That's
he
funny.
knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, this is how this person perceived all of this. So make sure we take everything with a grain of salt. We talk about the password between Bess and Houdini for their seances, and like, belief is a powerful thing at the end of the day. If you have a belief in something, I'm not here to shake it, and I'm not here to make you believe in anything at the end of the day either.
Right. No, that's cool. And I mean, just the idea of even back to tarot, just a mirror of like, you're going to meet the person wherever they are. And it's sort of like whatever they're bringing to the table, they're not going to take away anything more or less than that. You're not trying to change any minds or anything. Yeah.
Yes,
That's fascinating.
Tarot's a wild ride, man.
Yeah. No, well, and I'm sure. So will there be some element of that in pulling strings, or is it more like,
yes, I do have some tarot. I do have some cold reading pieces attached to tarot cards in pulling strings. I'm actually doing, I'm doing several pieces where people find their own card, and kind of, I tell them who they are based on the card that's attached to them.
Nice.
And yeah, it's fun. I like it a lot.
That's cool. Well, if folks are, again, anywhere reasonably within a 7-hour range of Salem, Massachusetts, they need to make that happen. And again,
absolutely,
in October, what a great time to visit that area. So
it's
yeah,
the best time to have a spooky magic show in Salem.
I love it. Yeah. Well, so folks, if they want to follow you on Instagram, that's Ginger Magic Girl, and then it's also gingermagicgirl.com. And if they want to get tickets for that, I know you said there's a link on your Instagram page, or it's at a place called Nocturne. Is that right?
Yep, a beautiful storefront on Front Street called Nocturne.
Awesome. Okay. Well, very good. And even if you're listening to this and it is not October, you should still go follow Caroline. And anytime you're having magical adventures, I'm sure you have that on your website, Instagram.
Yes.
This has been lovely. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And,
happy spooky.
Yeah, right. Happy spooky season to you and to our friend listening. And that is going to do it for this episode. But for behind the scenes access to my Museum of the Impossible project, as well as info about public shows, private events, social media, and more, head on over to peterwood.com. I'm Peter Wood. Thanks.